Well, it was only a matter of time until the honeymoon period with Kamala Harris would come to an end. And with just over 2 months to go until Americans cast their vote, it looks like that day has come. Looking at the latest polling that is out today, Donald Trump is either even or well ahead of Kamala Harris in 7 crucial battleground states. According to a Trafalgar Group survey, Donald Trump leads Kamala Harris 47 to 45% in Pennsylvania, and he's ahead 47 to 46% in Wisconsin. Now, a separate survey by Insider Advantage shows that Donald Trump is leading Kamala Harris by 1 point in Arizona, Nevada, and North Carolina. Now, we know that both campaigns are targeting the independent and undecided voters in key states, and anything can happen between now and November 5. But the latest figures that show that support for Kamala Harris is slipping comes just days after she finally sat down for an interview with CNN's Dana Bash, which was more of a puff piece than anything else. Yet Kamala Harris still struggled to get her message out clearly.
But first to the Kamala Harris interview, which ended up looking more like a campaign ad than a hard-hitting interview.
Welcome on board. Thank you. It's good to see you.
This is not where Vice President Harris thought she would be.
We're going to Georgia. Yes. 7th trip there this year for me.
A surprise nominee for president just months from Election Day. Set in motion after a stunning debate.
Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Some within your own party are wondering if President Biden should even step aside. What do you say to that?
There was a slow start, but it was a strong finish.
And then an extraordinary decision.
I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation.
Philadelphia!
What usually takes years of planning, coming together in a matter of weeks.
Tim Wall!
After a historic nomination at the convention in Chicago,
On behalf of everyone whose story could only be written in the greatest nation on earth, I accept your nomination to be President of the United States of America.
the Harris Walls ticket is now pushing forward with the shortest presidential campaign in modern history.
What did you hear from voters here?
People are very optimistic.
We joined them on the trail as they visited the battleground of Georgia. Just 68 days from the election.
And then after the first break, they ran this puff piece.
As voters are getting to know Kamala Harris, they want answers on how she will make their lives better. She heard that here at Sandfly Barbecue in Savannah.
What we're going to do to increase access to capital for small businesses, I'll be rolling out next week. Part of what we're going to be doing in terms of a tax credit.
On the trail, she talks about her experience, years in the courtroom as a district attorney and eventually California's attorney general. She wants to reframe the contest as the prosecutor versus the felon.
I know Donald Trump's type. I've been dealing with them my whole career.
The former president is turning to a well-defined playbook of personal attacks.
I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black.
And in just 12 days, the nominees will meet face-to-face for the first time.
She's not a good debater. She's not a smart person. She doesn't want to debate.
If you've got something to say, say it to my face.
CNN is a joke for pretending that this would be a legitimate effort to probe Harris. That editing wasn't appropriate on either of those moments. And when CNN's Dana Bash did initially ask some substantive questions, there was no follow-up and there was just rambling and off-track answers. Harris was asked about why she backflipped on fracking, but there wasn't much pushback.
2019, I believe, at a town hall, you said you were asked, would you commit to implementing a federal ban on fracking on your first day in office? And you said, there's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. So yes. So it changed in that campaign?
In 2020, I made very clear where I stand. We are in 2024, and I've not changed that position, nor will I going forward. I kept my word, and I will keep my word.
Harris had previously called for illegal immigration to be decriminalised, but when she responded to this fact, the reporter just let her ramble.
Another question about something that you said in 2019 when you first ran. There was a debate. You raised your hand when asked whether or not the border should be decriminalized. Do you still believe that?
I believe there should be consequence. We have laws that have to be followed and enforced that address and deal with people who cross our border illegally, and there should be consequence. And let's be clear, in this race, I'm the only person who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations who traffic in guns, drugs, and human beings. I'm the only person in this race who actually served a border state as Attorney General to enforce our laws, and I would enforce our laws as president going forward. I recognize the problem.
In truth, Harris is part of an administration which has an out-of-control illegal immigration issue, and the journalist failed to press further on this fact. And after these more serious questions, it got super weird, fluffy, and very promotional. Rather than digging into her record of policies, they started asking about the amazing moment Biden stepped aside for her.
And we have some never-before-shared details about the phone call that changed everything between President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris.
Really? That's your big exclusive? Well, it better be good. Let's check it out.
My family was staying with us, and including my baby nieces, and we had just had pancakes and, you know, Auntie, can I have more bacon? Yes, I'll make you more bacon. And then we were sitting down to do a puzzle. And the phone rang, and it was Joe Biden. And he told me what he had decided to do. And I asked him, "Are you sure?" And he said yes. And that's how I learned about it.
Wow, compelling stuff. Harris has been hiding from hard-hitting interviews since launching her campaign, and this was actually an opportunity for CNN to really test her candidacy. Instead, it is clear that this joke of a network simply wanted to promote her. It wasn't journalism, it was an endorsement. Well, joining me on the show this week is Sky News host Caleb Bond and Radio 2CC Stephen Senetiempo. Now, let's start with you, Caleb. I mean, could that have been more of a flagrant endorsement of this person than what we just saw?
I don't even know how to respond to that, to be perfectly honest. I mean, remember during the 2016 campaign, CNN was derided as the Clinton News Network. Well, perhaps in this case they should change to KNN and be the Kamala News Network, because what I just watched there had more mayo on it than a bad burger from McDonald's. Seriously. They have set her up as though she's the second coming of Jesus, and we've got to have Kamala Harris, otherwise the US is going to fall apart, etc., etc. What you would expect from an interview with any presidential candidate is a sit-down without the theatrics of all the production value. I mean, they've gone for like it's a doco that you're going to watch on Netflix or something, right? You don't want the production value. You want a hard-hitting journalist sitting in front of someone who's asking to be elected President of the United States, asking hard questions for an hour straight. You want to see the candidate squirm and duck and dive and work out where they sit on things. And that's not what you got. You got, as you pointed out, a bit of a puff piece and what seemed to be a promotional bit of material. I'm sure Kamala will now be using it on all of her social media because, you know, why spend money making your own stuff when CNN will do it for you? Well,
that's the thing. I mean, it was a pre-recorded interview, Stephen, as well. So they've had a lot of time to go in there and polish and edit. The way that they threw to various clips and sound bites was very strategic. But to Caleb's point, you've got somebody that wants to essentially be the most powerful person in the world, and nobody wants to test her. Nobody has the courage to put it back against her policies.
Well, there's a couple of things here. I was actually talking about this on my radio program this morning, the fact that American politicians are not very good when they front the media as opposed to Australian politicians who do it far more often. And I made the point that, you know, as a talkback radio announcer, I can get the Prime Minister on my program from time to time, whereas that will never happen in the United States. They're very, very polished when they make a speech that's been written by somebody else and they've got an auto cue, but you put them in front of somebody without a script and they're absolutely hopeless. But getting back to the point here, we all knew CNN was going to go this way. I mean, the fact that it was edited down from, somewhere in the vicinity of an hour to 18 minutes tells you everything you need to know about this, that it was always going to be a promotional piece rather than a hard-hitting interview.
Yeah, and I knew it was, Stephen. And I mean, Caleb, let's bring you in here. I knew it was going to be bad. But the way that they were segueing this music, the crying from the crowd. At one point, they threw up a photograph and they made it, you know, this historic photograph where she's kind of silhouetted by a young woman and tried to make it out as if this was the greatest thing that was happening. I just cannot believe... I mean, this is why CNN is losing viewers, isn't it? Surely people watch this, and the average American, the average person around the world watching this election, they have to understand that this is deceptive.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it may well play well to the CNN audience, but the CNN audience was going to vote for Kamala anyway, so I don't know that it's done her any favours. And of course, the strategy you seem to be seeing from a media perspective here is much the same as Biden in 2020, which is, you know, put Kamala in the bunker, don't put her in front of the media because she will slip up. And we know what she's like. I mean, if you see her in free-form interviews, or not interviews, but, you know, she's on a stage and talking, like, she is nuts. Absolutely nuts, and that's what they're trying to protect her from. So she does the rallies with scripts and auto cue, etc. This is the only interview she's agreed to so far, and she had to have her emotional support candidate next to her while she did it. It is so staged managed as to be ridiculous, and that is one of the areas, and I know Trump's in trouble in the polls at the moment, but that is one of the areas where Trump really has an advantage over Kamala, because he's not afraid of doing interviews and he's not afraid of going off script. And so as the campaign progresses, if we don't see her do any more interviews, she will hope that that is an advantage, but it gives space for Trump to go in and suck up, use the vacuum and suck up all the space that Kamala refuses to fill.
Yeah, exactly. And look, Stephen, Kamala Harris's performance, we can critique it all day, but where I actually get a bit angry about this is this journalist, Dana Bash. She had the opportunity to probe. And I really think that you owe your viewers, you owe them to probe somebody that's about to take all of this power. She is the front runner now. And yes, maybe a few weeks ago, Donald Trump was in the lead, but the polls are saying she's likely going to be the next leader of America. And we're just sitting here just waving her through. I just find it unconscionable.
Yeah, but you've got to look at the context of it, Jack. I mean, you think back to the 2019 election when Scott Morrison was running, and, you know, and I'm not particularly a Scott Morrison fan, but the media was en masse saying he cannot win this election, he's gone, it's going to be a Bill Shorten government. Then he proved them wrong, and many people in the media here hated that, and they never forgave him for proving them wrong. It didn't matter what his policies were, didn't matter what his performance was, he proved us wrong and we're going to get him. Well, Trump did the same thing in 2020, and they are out to get him because he proved them wrong. Now, you know, I wish Trump was more statesmanlike and I wish he was different than he was. And he's very combative and all of that. But ultimately, his biggest crime is he proved the media wrong and they're going to get him back for it.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I mean, Trump has labelled this interview boring. And in journalism, that's maybe the biggest sin that you can commit if you're an anchor and you have that opportunity. And Caleb, I mean, some of those moments are just nauseating where it's like, oh, tell us about when Joe called you and changed the world, you know, this coup essentially, where they've forced him to step down and everything's just through these rose-coloured glasses.
And this is the thing, right? So you can do an interview like that, right? And so here at Sky News...
But not the first, not the very first interview that she's done.
But my issue is that they've dressed it up as a journalistic interview, right? So if you're going on with a host who clearly leans to one side and that's what their program is, you know what you're going to get out of it. I mean, you know, if someone's interviewed by me on Sky News, they kind of know which way I'm going to go. Sometimes you don't know which way I'm going to go, but you kind kind of know which way I'm going to go with it, right? But what you expect out of a presidential interview, particularly the first one, as you point out, is hard-hitting journalism, and that's not what this was. It was an opinion piece as opposed to a piece of journalism. Decide which lane you're in and stick to it.
Yeah, and the production value behind it was honestly akin to a campaign ad. It was bad.